whatever photo shoot that I have or video shoot that I'm going to, I always take whatever I need for that particular shoot plus the unknowns. I don't take everything. I keep everything basically in cases. I could essentially take all the stuff with me for the most part, but I don't generally do that because it gets to be quite cumbersome. Now, if I'm traveling somewhere great and I can't make a trip back or have someone bring something out to me in an absolute emergency type of situation, that I will overdo it. But for most things, for example, if I get, a senior picture session I got to go shoot, there's no reason for me to take video equipment or audio equipment with me to do those things. So I generally will just then take everything I need for that particular shoot. One body for sure, maybe two, depending on where it is. Um, Probably a couple of lenses, maybe three. There's always at least one lens that I absolutely won't ever show up to a photo shoot without. And then I always allow myself to be like, okay, this is what I think is going to happen at this shoot, but you don't really know. You might come to a location where maybe you need a wide angle shot and your portrait lens doesn't necessarily do it. So I usually take a few different things with me. So if I go to a photo shoot for seniors, I'll have a camera with me. I'll take at least one flash, a trigger to control that flash remotely. I'll also have one primary lens and a secondary lens, maybe a third lens, depending on what it is and where I'm going. Um, I'll have, extra batteries, extra memory cards to save everything too. And then I'll have a diffuser and a reflector to go with me. So I'll use like a soft box sometimes if I can get the family to hold on to it and be my assistant. Then sometimes I'll put a flash in that and maybe use it for fill light. Sometimes it never comes out of the car. Sometimes the photo shoot just doesn't warrant it. It's not necessary. We shot early enough. I had plenty of light. I'm able to work with the shadows and do all that kind of stuff. So I'll just leave it in the car. But I usually have it with me because you just never know. I would rather take a little too much with me than to get there and realize that, man, if I would have had this, it would have made this shoot so much better and that photo would have just come to life. There's nothing worse than editing a photo after the fact and wishing you would have done something not just minorly different, but something very drastically different where you know that even in Photoshop and stuff like that, you're going to be limited in what you can do while still allowing it to continue to look natural. Um, so I go through that and then I bring it back home and then I put everything back into its place and then I start culling the images and that type of stuff. So every single shoot, it is a planning process as far as what am I going to take. Now, when you do enough senior pictures, you just know instinctively what you're going to be taking to all of these. Same thing if you're going to shoot a wedding. A wedding, you definitely err on the side of having a little too much, if any, because that is an event where you don't get to reshoot it. And you also don't just get to leave whenever. You don't get to just reschedule. Hey, let's try this tomorrow. This isn't working. You really would much rather have too much stuff there that you never even take out of the case or the bag than to be like, oh, wow, I didn't anticipate this. What am I going to do? And then you kind of have to play off like, it was better not to do it or something like that. But if you're a seasoned photographer or if you have a lot of pride in the work that you do, you don't want to allow yourself to regret doing something like that. So weddings, I definitely do take a little bit more than I would take on a regular typical shoot as far as a portrait goes. Headshots, very simple. Headshots, I generally show up with one lens. If I know in advance that they want to do full body as well, I'll probably show up with a second lens just so I can shoot a little bit more wide angle, maybe like a 50 millimeter to go with the portrait lens. And I have a pop-up backdrop. I have multiple backdrop systems I can go to. If it's going to be something where I want to need to create some more distance, there'll be multiple people in it, I'll use a wider one. It's a little bit more of a chore to set that one up. Otherwise, I just have one that I can put together in 5 to 10 minutes and set up some external lights, control that because that's an absolute must. You can't just show up to do a headshot and not actually control the light at all. Even if I'm shooting a headshot outdoors, you still want to somehow add to it to give it a lot more pop than what nature will naturally do. Now, sometimes you can get by with it. Maybe sometimes you can get by with just a simple reflector. But a lot of the times it's nice just to be able to set up some lights and actually control it like you're the creator of that little universe. Outdoor headshots are great. The downside, of course, is the wind can cause things to blow. You get a little distracted too much by the backdrop, and you kind of lose focus as to what you're actually trying to do, because a really good headshot usually will have the backdrop pretty heavily out of focus, kind of just blurred out in the distance. And if you start focusing on things like, oh my gosh, look at that sunset, let's do this, you don't really want that in most of your headshots, because it's a little bit more of a distraction than what you're actually trying to focus on. So I'm very pro outdoor headshot, but I'm also probably even more pro indoor, whether that be if you're shooting with a backdrop or if you're shooting with a natural location, like an office space or something like that. And we'll get into that in another video and kind of talk about headshots. But those are the types of things that I have to anticipate, though, when I go do a shoot. Or if someone's coming to me somewhere else, is I got to know, what do I need to be able to give them the shot that I absolutely cannot under deliver on. So that will involve, if I go to a location headshot thing, I will have lights, usually speed lights, some. I don't usually do continuous lighting if I'm going somewhere, but if I am going to shoot a shoot that I know is super important, I'll bring continuous lighting. I'll bring the backdrop stuff. I'll bring a tripod. I don't quite often use a tripod because everybody's height's a little bit different, and I don't usually just shoot in one location. But if it is just going to be one person and they're just going to be standing in the same place, we're going to kind of change it up and give different poses, type of stuff, then I will maybe put that on a tripod, so that it also forces my subject to then always know where that camera is going to be, so they're not allowed to drift or anything like that. They need to stay in their home spot for the most part. And a tripod's kind of nice with that, because if you're carrying it and you're holding the camera and you're moving around, they will naturally kind of move with you, and then eventually you get to the point where maybe the backdrop is starting to become a little bit off centered, and then you got to do a lot of Photoshop work, and that's just not a lot of fun, because that's just unnecessary work that's actually kind of a waste of your time, to be honest, if you can avoid it. Drone stuff, I'll go ahead and mention that. Drone, I'll show up with the drone, the filters, the batteries, the controller, all that stuff. I keep everything pretty much kind of in compartments, as far as like the drone has its own case, gimbals have their own case. Audio has its case. There's the photography has this case, the video stuff, the lighting, all these things kind of have their own cases, so that I can essentially just grab it and go and run and do that. Because if you've ever shot journalism, you totally understand the whole run and gun style of photography and video. And so you just need to be able to grab it and get out the door, and then you can show up ready to go with what it is you're going to be shooting. So the drone it's in a case, it's ready to go. I can grab it anytime. I always keep the batteries charged. If I haven't done anything with the drone in a couple of weeks, you got to make sure you charge them again, because they naturally, most brands will actually have them to where the batteries will deplete on their own, just for the safety of the batteries. And so you can get a lot more life out of them. So if I know I'm going somewhere, I'm only going to fly for 10 minutes, I don't worry so much about topping off the batteries, because I know how long the batteries will last for me, and I know how to get the most out of those things. But so if I show up to do drone, it's actually probably the least amount of stuff that I have to haul to anything, because it's very compact, and it's just very easy to just set up and go. And if I'm going to shoot drone, I'm quite often not shooting something else at the same time. If you've ever taken the test, you know that you have to adhere to those rules, and part of the rules is you don't multitask while you're operating a drone in the national airspace. It's just one of those things that's actually part of the exam. Do people do it? Am I perfect from it? Absolutely not. I mean, things come up, but if you don't have it, you don't have the temptation of trying to do other stuff, and you actually just get to focus on the one thing at hand. Because a drone has two things. One, yeah, it could damage an airplane. It could cause some catastrophic failure in the airspace. But probably even more dangerous is what you could do to the stuff on the ground. There's people down there. We got 8 billion people on this planet. So anywhere you go to fly a drone, there's a chance that somebody's in the vicinity, and a drone, no matter how small, could cause permanent damage to somebody, and in some situations possibly cause someone to lose their life. So I always highly recommend that if you are going to be a drone operator, be a drone operator while that thing is on. Don't try to be anything else, because that is where, you get overly confident. That's where something bad can happen. And then it's too late at that point. So I do like that that's just in its own case. I just grab it, head out the door, and I just go, and everything is good to go there. Audio, kind of the same thing. If I know I'm going to go take pictures, I'm not going to shoot any video whatsoever. If I'm not interviewing anybody, it's pointless to take audio with me. But if I'm going to go shoot video, audio's got to go. I mean, it has to go. Whether I just take a single microphone or an external recorder or anything along those lines. Lav mics, it doesn't really matter. If you're shooting video, audio quite often is just as important. Now, when I'm doing drone, I don't record from the drone the sound, because it would just sound like a big giant bumblebee. But I still am going to put sound to that later. And sometimes the best sound to go with that could be ambient sounds that I could have captured down on the ground. Like if I'm out in the country and I'm shooting some farmland, or I'm trying to shoot something else that's going on, well, maybe birds chirping in that particular area would add some charm. So I can either go to some stock and grab it, or capture it as I'm out there. So a lot of times I will have some form of way to record that. And you can even use your cell phone. Let's just be honest. You can use the microphone or the voice app, voice recorder app, Memo, or whatever it is called, on your phone, and actually record some of that stuff. You may have to clean up some of the wind sound or something like that, because they're not really designed to block out all that and give you really high quality sound. But cell phones are coming along so much that they probably actually could do a really good job today. I just don't, because you get used to not having to do a lot of post-processing to fix stuff. And when you have your own equipment, you kind of know what you can trust and what you don't trust. But definitely give it a try. I mean, you could definitely set a cell phone near a river and capture sound amazing. And if all you have to do is just block some of that sound, put it behind some type of cover or something. But we'll get into that stuff also in future videos. But for the most part, that's kind of what goes into my decision for what I put into my camera bag and take to things, is knowing not only what am I going to shoot, but what also could creep up that I need to shoot, that otherwise I may regret that I didn't do it. And I've done it. I think every photographer's probably shown up. They've probably been shown up somewhere and they forgot a card, or they only have one card, or the batteries are almost dead. There's so many different things that just kind of come up when you get into the world of hurry, that experience will teach you to not do going forward. Like, you get done with the wedding shoot, your battery's almost dead. The best thing you could really do, put those things on the charger when you get home. Yeah, you may not shoot the rest of that night, and your entire intentions probably are not to shoot anything the rest of that night, but you don't know what's going to come up in the morning, or you don't know what else is going to go on. You don't know if maybe that battery is actually now bad, and you're not going to learn that until you try to charge it. My advice is just get all that stuff out of the way as soon as you possibly can, so that you aren't having to hurry around and get prepared for the next thing. But also because you can trust that when you grab your bag and you go out to the car, just through habits and discipline, your stuff is ready to go. So that's very important to me, that I stay on top of all those things. No matter how exhausted I am at the end of the day, I'll plug my camera in, and I'll let the charger actually charge the batteries through the camera. And that right there ultimately tells me that, okay, I know it's done. The lights have turned off, or now the camera's sitting on the table. I'm ready to, in case there's a fire. I throw on the lens, put it in the bag, and I take off. When I go to a fire, I only show up with really two things. I show up with a camera and a lens. Obviously, there's a card inside, but those are the two main elements that I show up with. I don't go there to change the lens. I don't go there to do anything else. So I don't need to carry anything. So I put it in a smaller bag, and then I run out the door and do those types of things. So, and that's just through experience. I imagine, I don't know, I probably think back, the first fire I probably ever went to, I might have showed up with like 3 or 4 lenses, because I didn't really know what to think. But now, knowing how it all works, I know what I need and what I don't need. Same thing if I go shoot sports. If If I'm shooting football, I know what I need, what I don't need. If I'm shooting basketball, I know what I need, I don't need, and so forth. And so having that plan in your mind and through that experience will save you a lot of time and will also force you to have a discipline that will allow you to focus on what it is you're there to do. Okay? You're not going to be fretting over anything. If you know you go to a wedding and you need 3 main lenses, you need to be able to shoot 35 millimeter, 50 millimeter, and 85 millimeter. If you have anything beyond that, that's great. It's extra credit. But those are the 3 main focal lengths that I would say every photographer, for the most part, agrees on that you have to have at a wedding. Now, can you get by on just a 50? 100%. Would your photography improve greatly if you could then throw in 85 or 70 or something of a little bit more telephoto? Definitely. Same thing with the wider angle. I don't shoot a lot of things with a lot of wide angles with portraits, but sometimes you want to tell a story of something larger, so you want to have that little bit wider angle. But still, same advice. You'd rather not need it and have it than to need it and not have it. And that's kind of true for pretty much everything in our lives. So that's how I make decisions. That's what I decide that goes into my camera bag every single shoot. Every single shoot is literally different. But for the most part, when you start to do the same types of shoots, you start to put the exact same things back in your bag. And maybe you don't need to. Maybe you have just enough stuff to stay in one bag and you just always take it. That is great if you do that. Unfortunately, I have 7 lenses, multiple camera bodies, lots of batteries, other accessories like handles and stuff like that I take with me, so I don't realistically have the space to do that in a single bag. But that's just me. I could put it all in a case and take the case, but I'm not a big take the cases with me if I don't have to. I used to do that because I thought, oh man, this is just so cool. But God, that's just wear and tear unnecessarily. And when I realized I was never taking stuff out, I just don't do that. So that's my advice to you. Maybe you have some other deciding factors to help you determine what you're going to take places. Nothing's right, nothing's wrong. Just make sure whatever you do have, you have enough to be able to get done what you need to get done. That's the only advice I think anybody could possibly give somebody. So do your thing, learn through some experiences, try to anticipate what's going to happen, and most importantly, have a lot of fun doing it while you're doing it. Thank you.